Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Corporate Jet Investor Town Hall. Hello to you in Washington, Bristol, South Carolina, Napa, Zurich, Monaco, Bordeaux, Bon dia in Lisbon. Welcome. This week we're focusing on Europe. Thanks very much to Jetcraft for sponsoring us this episode. Sign up for the Jetcraft market forecast on their website. It comes out in a few weeks. But let's focus on Europe, and who better to kick us off than the Chief Operating Officer from the European Business Aviation Association, Robert Baltus. Robert, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and good to see you back on virtually, because good to see you being back on live as well.
But you're not actually that well, are you? You've actually got COVID this week.
Well, I'm well, but technically I'm not, because I'm in insulation, so there you go. I think my wife is very happy with it. I have to stay in my office, and I have a separate sleeping room and a separate bathroom. It's great.
And you're just working flat out, 24 hours a day.
Yes.
As you recover. So go on then, Robert. You get to see, you spend your time talking to everyone who's everyone in European business aviation. What are you seeing at the moment?
Well, obviously, we get the trends because we have a gentleman, Arthur Thomas, at the EEBA, who works with the BNX, who shows us all the data. And the good thing about talking to people is that you see two different trends. The numbers are good if you look purely at the number of flights. So that's the positive, etc. But we shouldn't be lulled into a sense of relief there, because the majority, at least until the 8th of November, was intra-European flights, so short flights. So the long haul, the ultra long haul, the larger cabins, they were not doing so well as yet. And the one thing we must not underestimate, and this is the feedback we get from a lot of our members, is the issues we have with the workload to organize flights. So there's a tremendous amount of work. It's almost 4 times as many emails for the same flight now. So workload-wise, staffing-wise, our members are working flat out. We're doing much better than the other industries in aviation. Cargo is obviously doing well, but I think that's the main trend. Doing well, but okay.
And so, you talk about intra-European. We've seen the US is just on fire. Are you optimistic that that's going to happen now? Well, I suppose things aren't opening up, are they? Things are starting to close down again.
Yeah, and that's the difficult bit. I mean, what you see is the fourth wave and how it's behaving. I think we're still looking a lot at the criteria of infections. Obviously is the one from the previous pandemic was the main thing. I think the second, which is becoming the primary now one, is the number of people that goes to the hospital, etc. But each country in Europe has their own competence in health. So, we're all European, but each country has its own way of dealing with it. And we're trying to make sure that there is a level playing field and we can continue to operate where it's safe.
One of the things you've been working on for several years, actually 10 years, is the reduced required landing distance. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, it's an amazing project that the team that's now at EEBA inherited from the people before us, and I would like to single out Brian Humphreys, who did an awful lot of work on that. What the EEBA team did at the time is we were looking at it and saying, well, look, we have reduced runway. We can only use 60% effectively of a runway. Otherwise, it's not safe to land. So we had external academics look at it and say, yeah, but what's the reason why we need that space we can't use? Because we cannot fly into certain airports. And we see that some people then fly on the private rules instead of commercial rules to get into a certain airport. So what's the idea behind it? And the interesting, fascinating thing was nobody could tell us why it was 60%, because you could technically say, well, if it's safer, you should only use 50% or 40% of the runway. So what we did is we did an analysis of all the incidents and accidents that took place. From that, we got the variables, what caused the incidents, and then we looked at how can we mitigate this. So together with EASA, we went through this process, 10 years long, to come up with all kind of rules that if you have well-trained pilots, there's the aircraft is in the right condition, there's a stabilized approach, there's a certain amount of training, etc., etc. If you do all those things, you mitigate all that risk. And therefore, you actually can use 80% of that runway for the same level of safety or even better. So that's now finally introduced, August 11th. And we see a lot of our members and national authorities now trying to implement it. You can imagine if it takes 10 years to create a rule, it's not going to be easy. So we're actually doing something nice, and I don't want to go into too many details, but we're doing this together with EASA. So what we did is we created a checklist for the operators to make it easy to figure out, hey, do we comply? But we have created the same checklist from a different angle for the authorities, and EASA gives that to the authorities. So that should, in the end, mean that you get much more harmonized rules throughout Europe because they use the same checklist. But it makes it easier for both parties as well.
And do you know roughly how many airports that opens up in Europe?
I don't have the figure at hand, but it's hundreds of airports, and it depends on the aircraft type as well. So for certain airports, you can now fly a larger aircraft in if needed. You can fly an aircraft in with more payload. So there's not a strict number because there's too many variables in there.
Another thing you've been working on is flight time limitations. How's that going?
Yeah. Flight time limitations. Both the RRLD and the flight time limitations come out of the fact that the EEBA did research. Why do people use illegal charter? And one of the reasons was there's too much regulation for commercial operations. So the EEBA works on trying to lower that. Flight time limitations don't apply to a private operation, and otherwise we have commercial rules which are really awkward. The runway is quite an issue. So we did a runway, and on the flight time limitation, what we want is flight time limitations that is made for the air taxi industry. So it's safe, but we can also economically operate certain flights. The long-haul FTL is made for a BA pilot flying from Heathrow to New York and back the next day. It's not made for corporate aviation where you could fly to Tokyo, next day on to Seoul. From Seoul, you go to the Middle East, Africa, and then back to Europe. Because then, where do you start your clock? And how do you deal with acclimatization? So the EEBA organized is basically funding research by another academic research agency to try to make the FTL much better for business aviation.
And the other big issue, which I guess a lot of people in the US probably haven't noticed or heard about because the border's been shut, flying into Poland's been problematic, hasn't it? Do you want to take us through the PNR issue?
Yeah, unfortunately for our friends in the US, the main issue is actually 2018. 2018 passenger name records came into effect by a directive of the European Commission because they thought that will help us fighting crime. Great idea. They wanted us to share information about the passengers. Now, whether we like it or not, we have to comply with it. A lot of our members did so by sending the data to the FBO or any other means, etc. Now, the Polish authorities have taken a very strict line in this, and they didn't have their systems well open to receive the information, but then they also basically say, you didn't send us the right information. Now, there's a window of 3 years that they can fine you for this. Now, we're in 2021 now, and guess what's happened for the last 6 to 8 months? People who flew into Poland in 2018 are receiving fines. And those are big fines. And if you fly there often, like some of our members do, you get a lot of fines. So we've been very actively working, actually also with IATA, for commercial airlines, A4E for commercial airlines, and others, to try on a European level, on a national level, with the border guard in Poland, to try to change the situation. At the same time, we've tried to educate our members to make sure that if they go to Poland, that they can comply in easy way. So either through their technical means, by their flight ops software or something similar. And that the FBOs on the receiving end make sure that anybody flying in, please fill this in, otherwise it will be fairly expensive. So to be continued, if I can make any advertising on it, if you have an issue with it in your EBA member, or even if you're not an EBA member, look on our website. It explains what to do. You need a lawyer, a Polish lawyer, to help you out. It's going to cost you money. If you're lucky, you don't have to pay the fine. If you're unlucky, which can happen, you will have to pay the fine. We keep on fighting, but in the meantime, the recipients are stuck.
And if you get a letter in Polish and you don't know what it is, it's worth getting a Polish lawyer to read it for you.
It's even funnier than that. When it started, you would have to fill a form in Polish to go to the Polish police to say you wanted to have a permit to start to send information, and that would take then 2-3 weeks. You can imagine if one of our members gets a call, can you fly me to Warsaw tomorrow? The answer would have been yes. So they would have flown. It is, some things you can't make up, and it's unfortunate, but we have to deal with it.
So going back to the reduced required landing distance, one of the things which is exciting about that is it opens up airports that, for charter that could only have been private, and which also means that it should cut down, hopefully, on the legal charter, which we know is a big issue. And we also had a big development 2 weeks ago with the Sala case. Do you want to take us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Sala case is one of those told you so things. You don't want to say it, but you know it's going to happen at some point. Now, the very unfortunate thing for the Sala family is that it was a famous person. If it had been Alistair White or Robert Baltus on that aeroplane, we would still be somewhere in the water, and nobody, it would have been a small aeroplane crashed and nobody noticed. So, unfortunately, it was Sala, and that's why it got the whole momentum, and it puts legal charter or pre-charter or whatever you call it on the agenda. We've been for years as EBA active in trying to stop it. We've done that with other associations. We had obviously Dave Edwards at the Air Charter Association. He's a champion in this area. Obviously he moved on, but he was really strong on this. National associations. It's one of those things which is really hard to get rid of. And we try to do it by reducing the burden of regulation, by making the difference between private and commercial operations operationally smaller, so reduce runway, FTL, and things like that. But it's extremely frustrating if you read the accident report and you see all the things that went wrong and all the things. In my world, we know the Swiss cheese theory for safety. Well, this one was so bad, there was not even a cheese. It was just one big hole. It's too bad. So we continue working on this. And what we're doing at the moment with a lot of other associations, including the NATA in the US, we're working on introducing a website that everybody can use to explain why not. It's such a waste of time that, assuming you're a pilot, you spend all your money, your career on getting your license. It's not worth it to lose it for this. And if you're an aircraft owner, you get an aircraft and your insurance is for it because when something happens. There's so many reasons not to do it. And I want to make sure people are aware of those.
Okay, and moving on to cheerier things. EBAs.
Yes.
You're getting ready for that.
Absolutely. It's really good. The team at the NBAA and the EBA, we've been working on making sure that eBay stay relevant, and we listen a lot to people, what they say, what they like, what they don't like, and then work on it. So we've done a lot of work on the cost side, in making sure we get the hotels at better rates. So we had the chance to really renegotiate hotel rates down, mind you, by Swiss standards. So they're still expensive. It's still, if the conference would have been in London or in Paris, you would have the same issue. Because whenever there is a conference, prices go up. But we've been able to cap a lot of those rooms. So if people go through our website to book their hotel rooms, they have access to that inventory. So please do that. On the floor, we've got 4 main things. One is sustainability, innovation, safety, and networking. And that's the groupings, the pillars we really want to work on, because it is the ultimate place to network. And you've done your event in Miami, so your bed is suited for it. But we feel that people are really eager to go out. So we hope this 4th wave is gone, and we'll be ready. We have some amazing innovation companies putting some of their products on the floor. So the industry is evolving, and from a sustainability perspective, we have to evolve. Now, if you put that together with the perfect storm with the innovation companies, which we have coming from left, right, and center, and a lot of them will not make it, but they are bringing a new energy to the industry, and actually, so it's our industry with innovation together, and then we can beat the sustainability issues. So eBay should be the place to be there, and the besides safety, the final pillar, networking. I went to Cologne last week, and it was really good just to talk to people again. And I think that is what we see.
Absolutely, it's really exciting. Robert, thank you so much for joining us. You also did a brilliant job. I think I jumped in and out a few times with technical issues, so thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here.
From your COVID, and good luck in your last days of isolation.
Thanks.
And that was Robert Barters, COO of the European Business Aviation Association, EBAA. We're absolutely delighted now to have Sarah McGee from Flight Care Global. Flight Care Global is actually, when did you launch, Sarah? It's really new, isn't it?
It did well. We actually set the company up at the end of 2018 with a view to doing some market research and preparing ourselves for a grand launch at the beginning of 2020. And then obviously the pandemic hit. So it changed quite a few things for us. But what it did do as well was it gave us an opportunity to be able to really concentrate on developing our technology. So our solution is highly tech driven. And so it gave us that opportunity to take a back step. I mean, obviously also gave us quite a few sleepless nights, and same as everyone, the pandemic's not been kind to a lot of people. So yeah.
It's really cool though. Do you want to explain what your product is?
So we provide health risk management solutions, in blunt terms, medical support for passengers and crew at every stage of travel. So whether it's before you get on a plane, whether you're on a plane or at destination, we can provide assistance if you get sick. And there are various levels of support depending on how sick you are. Thankfully, most medical incidents are simply incidents. They're not emergencies, but the whole purpose of having this kind of support is to have security and somebody to help you in the event of a medical emergency.
So but a big part of it is you've got a CEO or an ultra high net worth in the back of a cabin, and that first 30 minutes is critical, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I mean, the thing is, it's difficult because in business aviation especially, medical emergencies are really rare. Medical events are also quite rare. So it's really easy to think, well, it's never going to happen to me. And in fact, I spoke to a potential client a couple of weeks ago who said, look, we've been looking after this guy for a number of years now. Nothing's ever happened. You know, I think we'll be okay for the next, you know, whatever, which is just an interesting, you know, you can't knock it because, I mean, look, in business aviation, medical support is a insurance policy. In commercial aviation, it's an operational requirement, just purely because of the number of passengers and the flights, etc. But we've created a solution that's a lot more cost effective to what it was. We structure our financials a little bit differently in terms of a smaller upfront fee and then a per case fee. Which just makes it a lot more affordable especially for business aviation travellers. So we're hoping that people will, and people are actually interested in a different solution. And the tech piece is really important as well, because we use technology. It streamlines those front-end processes, which otherwise take an awful lot of time. You know, you have a medical emergency, the last thing you want to have to do is to pick up the phone and try and call through SATCOM and deal with all of those frustrations and give your registration of your aircraft, where you're going. Because we use technology, you scan a QR code and all that information lands straight away the minute you connect. So yeah, it's a interesting proposition. So our clients tell us.
And I know at least one OEM signed you up as well to put them on your fleet, so it's going really well. But
yes, we were very fortunate to be able to land a deal with one of the OEMs, which we're really proud of, because we're still a very young company. So it's really nice to have that confidence and that in us as an operation. I mean, although we're a young company, though, all the founders come from extensive aviation backgrounds. So hopefully we know what we're talking about.
You're also really global, aren't you? Because some of your team's in Australia, you're over here. So do you think you were better placed for the pandemic?
Yes, I mean, it made it a bit difficult in terms of communicating. So, I mean, there's only so much you can do by Zoom. So we made the best of it. I mean, I saw my colleague for the first time in 2 years, actually, at the Dubai Air Show last week, which, by the way, was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It was so amazing just to be able to interact with people. And it was, I think everybody felt the same, you know, even for, obviously a lot of people know each other, but even if you didn't know somebody, people were so much more open to talking to you. And, you know, sitting on a bus where normally people don't want to make eye contact unless they know you, or people are chatting and swapping business cards and sharing stories about how they're getting back to normal. So yeah, it was really exciting and a very good show for us as well.
Do you think you've benefited from COVID? Sort of brought health on board flights to something people weren't thinking about as much?
Yes, I think people are more health aware, definitely. But I think on the flip side, people are also, because of the pandemic, less keen to make changes. Robert made an important point about flight organisation and how much more it is involved and the length of time it takes to organise a flight. So there's so much that's happened because of COVID that I think for a lot of operators and business jet owners, some of them are thinking, do you know what? Even if it's the best solution in the world, we're not going to change anything right now. We just need some stability. We've got so much that we're having to deal with. So on the one hand, yes, it's raised that awareness, but I still think it's going to be a difficult time for a lot of people. I think it's getting better, but I just think that it's still, we shouldn't underestimate the impact of this pandemic for sure.
No, and you've been in the industry a long time. You're now covering the world, but you used to cover Asia, and that's just a really tough business aviation market at the moment, isn't it?
Do you know, it's really sad. I actually saw Sergio from Gamma in Dubai, which I thought was very brave of him, because I said to him, how are you going to get back? And he said, oh yes, it's a problem, because he's going to have to quarantine for 21 days. So it's really sad, El. You know, I remember all the times that we used to spend in Asia and in Hong Kong, only Hong Kong especially. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure that it'll ever go back to what it was, especially with what's happening with mainland as well, and the focus on that from Hong Kong. So yeah, I think Asia's a really difficult place right now.
And Europe, you're talking to lots of European operators. Are you more optimistic?
Yes, definitely. Europe and the Middle East for sure. I mean, certainly in the Middle East, like I say, we had some really good interest, and talking to other people there, they also had very good interest, and things are opening up. I think things are definitely getting easier. But yeah, it's a real contrast to what's happening in Asia for sure.
And going back to that person who said to you, you know, we've been flying this individual around for 10 years, we haven't had any problems, we'll risk it. What do you say to them?
Do you know, nothing, because I just have to say, okay, you know, it's just one of those things. You know, it's a bit, I don't know. It's a difficult thing to say. You just have to say, okay, fine, because you can never push the point. People have to come to that decision of their own accord. You know, it is like selling insurance, but you can't underestimate how much. It's like that story of somebody, you know, in a boat and sort of saying, oh, you know, they're in a boat on the ocean, and somebody says, oh, will you give me X amount for this cork? And they go, no, don't be so ridiculous. I'm not going to give you anything for a cork. And then there's a hole in the boat, and they go, how much will you give me now? They go, well, I'll give you everything I've got, but it's too late. So, you know, it's such a small thing, comparatively speaking, in terms of what you need to pay out to support. And this isn't just us, this is medical response generally. To me, I don't know why people wouldn't do it. And you know, I've spoken at the CGI events in Singapore, you know, before, and I always say the same thing: why wouldn't you do it? And I think one of the difficulties is if we look at the regulations, I think that's where it all starts. You know, there are some regulations in commercial aviation about what you have to have on board. In business aviation, it's perfectly fine for you to fly pretty much anywhere without anything on board, which means if you have a cardiac arrest, you're going to die because you haven't got a defib, you haven't got an AED. You know, if you know, it's never mind my services, I'm just talking basic, and it happens. People suffer from cardiac arrests. I mean, in the UK, especially now, where everybody's, you know, really moving towards having AEDs in all public places, in schools, and there's a good reason for that. So why, for the cost of really very little, AEDs are not expensive, why would you not have them on aircraft? I mean, personally, I wouldn't want to get on an aircraft without one being on there. But
and also, when you say the average age,
I'm sorry.
When you look at the average age of a CEO,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's or a business jet owner, it's, you know, the average owner of a business jet owner is still well over 60. It's not expensive to fit one. But
also, you can be young and still suffer these things. You know, we hear about it all the time, and people think it's a one-off, and it is. But what if that one-off is really close to you or you? So yeah, it's a.
Okay, on that warning, Sarah, thank you so much. And if anyone wants more information, Sarah, Flight Care Global, and it's very affordable for your aircraft. And you're not sponsoring, I'm just saying that.
Thanks, Sal. Thanks so much for having me on. It's lovely to see you again.
Great to see you. And your dog was really well behaved, so thank you.
Well, he's gone out, so I got rid of him.
Thanks, Sarah. Sarah McGee at Flight Care Global. And our last, but by no means least, when they launched Instajet. And now we have some more news coming from you. Nick, do you want to take us through it?
How are you? Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon now. Nice to see you. Yeah, so today we launched the route card. Going back to my roots, when you know, kind of helped NetJets come over to Europe back in the late 90s, early noughties. And obviously, when we started selling jet cards, then it was most of the people that were buying them were just wanted to go to their yacht, to their second home, to their ski chalet, and their other factories. So they were on kind of city pairs. So this effectively is a city pair card. So currently got the kind of top 25 routes in Europe that are on the card. Fixed price, so membership. Best prices in the industry coming to the USA in Q1. So yeah, should be good, hopefully.
And so it's a fixed price between London and Nice, or Moscow and Paris. And Nick, how are you fixing prices at the moment when in the US we're seeing charter prices rise significantly? How are you brave enough to fix them now?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, the options that we've got, and currently the way that we're doing it, is taking interest in aircraft, as a capital item. So basically buying block hours off of operators, and basically saying we're just going to fix these routes. Because one of the other really important things that seems to be happening in the US, that a lot of operators are kind of finding out, is the crews are burning out. The amount of utilization of the aircraft currently, it's bonkers. And what you can't afford to have really is this kind of spider's web of aircraft going in every direction and all kind of 4 points of the compass. I think a lot of operators are trying to kind of get a bit better work-life balance for their crews, trying not to burn them out. And increasing the capability, and for us, turning around and saying, well, you can fix your variable operating costs, just run these routes backwards and forwards all day long, and crews go home every night. It's starting to kind of, people are really properly trying to think about it. Sorry,
for those who, I think I'm cutting in and out a bit, we're delighted to have Nick Davis, founder and chief exec of Instajet, for those who didn't get that. And Instajet, your card's really interesting, and the fixed pricing. These are still individual flights, though, aren't they? It's not seat sharing.
Yeah. Oh no. We're never going near seat sharing ever. That is not a business model that I don't think will work. Not in this industry. So lots we've seen JetSmarter, we've seen everybody try and do it. And obviously you got JSX, and if you do it on city pairs, fine. But a lot of the people at the moment, until you can, I think, change the expectation of the passengers, not to be holding, video calls, sat next to somebody else that's trying to get some work done, when they're paying the same amount of the ticket. I've seen too many problems already go wrong with that, even with some of the operators in the US. So yeah, that's not a model we're interested in.
And with your route card, do you have premium days which you can't fly on? So do you have premium days you can't fly on, like Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting 48 hours in the US, that's for sure. So at the moment, I'm not really that bothered about the blackout days until such times, because we'll probably limit membership first before we limit anybody on blackout days. It's much easier to do that because the city pairs are fixed. And our utilization of the aircraft is fixed, obviously just based on either the aircraft category or the opening hours of the airport. Realistically for us, then that's our thing. We'll limit members before we put blackout days in. So, and it's like whenever you onboard customers, you're always trying, kind of educate them to not become lastminute.com and really try and give you as much notice as possible, because you just give the passengers a much better service.
So you launched 6 weeks ago, and it's easy to talk about limiting members now. In a year's time, will you really be able to turn away people?
I think the industry, we've run out of aircraft. Okay, everyone will tell you, particularly in the US, we've run out of aircraft. You can't, the prices have to go up. Okay, first and foremost, and I think that you need to start kind of looking after the infrastructure, because the infrastructure will break before the industry gets to a point where it can't cope with any more people, because we don't have enough pilots, we don't have enough aircraft. It's all of the engineering, the logistics, the FBOs, the fuel, the catering, and that's another area that's a real bone of contention that we really try and ensure that our passengers are very clear upon, and that is, don't have high expectations about the the catering side, because if that catering doesn't turn up to the right town number at the end, yeah, it's just a whole world of pain you can do without. So it's just not worth it.
We've got a question. I understand a lot of operators are losing aircraft from their AOC in the US. What's the main driver behind that?
To be honest with you, I think there's so many programs that are out there. Aircraft ownership, as we all know, and as you know, we've discussed on here before. Aircraft owners typically that go, I want to buy an aircraft. They give it to a management company. Management company barely makes enough money. Barely has enough pilots to be able to kind of afford that. Operator, the owner of the aircraft, typically doesn't end up getting any money back, still subsidizing everybody else getting rich with his aircraft. And it's wrong. So they're just getting out of aircraft because there's so many programs now where they don't have to have the risk, or they're able in the current marketplace to get exactly the same amount of money as what they did when they bought it, if they're selling to people that are just desperate for capacity to put into their own kind of super fleet programs. So there's, but there just aren't enough new orders out there. The OEMs are never going to ramp up, and I wouldn't, if I was an OEM, ramp up to meet the capacity, because we've got to get to a peak and then we've got to kind of slowly start drift down again. And I just hope when nobody's going to see a massive kind of cliff edge of this market. And the only thing I would say is that I think the amount of people in the market now that are private flying, I think this is a new base zero. So this is our new zero datum, and this is how much capacity we've got. So we need to manage it better and manage expectations, because there isn't, another 1,000 aircraft that are going to pitch onto the charter market across the globe in the next 12 to 24 months. So they're just not out there.
I think the other reason we're seeing some US owners switch from Part 135 to 91 is pilots. If you want to retain a pilot, it's a lot easier to retain a Part 91 pilot, isn't it? And say to him, you're going to fly for me 3 days a week, rather than I'm going to have you flogging this jet for me 5 days a week.
Well, so you've got a lot of problems that I'm certainly seeing in the US with regards to kind of a lot of the turboprop experienced captains that are maybe flying King Airs and stuff like that. And people are waving 150 grand in an envelope and saying, here's a golden handshake, come and fly for me, and I'm going to give you a Gulfstream. They're like, there's a big difference. But most of them now, I think it's the home life balance, it's the looking after the pilots, them having, the ability not to work to max FTL, and generally kind of getting home to see their families, which is the most important thing. Because I think the whole last couple of years, everyone's kind of gone, do you know what, it's okay, I just want to be home more, because you never know what's around the corner. And I think, we need to manage that first. Let's manage the pilots and the infrastructure and get the prices up, so the owners of the aircraft, and it becomes a business that effectively allows investors to, and management companies to invest in aircraft, to buy, to make money, not expect someone else to buy it to subsidize someone else getting richer. So that's not really the best way forward.
I've got a question from Terry Spruce. What will the first routes in the US be?
The high density bus route between certainly Florida, Teterboro. So your prime routes there. That's the bus route, whether it's Palm Beach or Opa-locka up to Teterboro. Then we'll bring in some seasonal routes, and we'll probably do the Van Nuys Teterboro as well. So there might be some interesting super stuff coming up there with some aircraft that are coming up shortly, but that we want to take. So yeah, those are the main routes.
And your route card costs €10,000 a year. And say I fly London, Paris, which is 5,000. Once I've done that return trip, do I then top up again? Is that how it works?
Just pay per flight. So I'm kind of saying, rather than you know how the brokerage industry works. Brokers, take a margin, and obviously if we're selling cars, we're selling time, we're selling minutes. I'm not interested in going 365, kind of different directions with an aircraft. I'd rather just stick to the core routes, because again, we've got the technology, we've got the data that tells us where all the aircraft are going, and we watch that in real time. So we see that on a daily basis. But so for me, it's about the membership is effectively the cost of me organising flights for you as a private travel manager is negligible in regards to the overall trip cost and what we want to pay the operators. We want the operators to end up with more money, not less money, and not arguing. So with us, it's great because we just pay this money less, literally, a couple of $100, less than the published price, and the operators get the rest. There's no, we don't ask for quotes from operators. We just say, here's the money. Do you want it? Crack on with it.
And we've seen, you've talked about the demand in the States. Are you feeling, you've been in charter a long time. Are you feeling it's coming back in Europe? Is next year going to be an amazing year for European charter?
I'm super worried at the moment about obviously what's happening in Austria and Holland, Germany, even a little bit in Italy. But, obviously it's the kind of, at the moment, the strongest routes, obviously, for us, Nice to Paris, Paris, Geneva, the kind of the standard network routes that are operating back into Farnborough and Biggin. I'm just worried this kind of the European wave, there's going to be, I'm hoping it's not going to kibosh the ski season. First and foremost. And if it does kibosh the ski season, then hopefully we'll see a really strong spring and early summer next year. And that's where I'm pretty sure that we will definitely run out of aircraft in Europe, next spring and summer for the Mediterranean. So, and if there's more lockdowns, people are just going to be focusing more and more on this way of traveling. And there's also really concerning as well about the scheduled airlines. The European airlines, when you look at what the likes of Lufthansa are doing and some of the other carriers, they're thinning out the business class and first class. It's starting to disappear, and they're putting premium economy seats in. So you're going to have a lot of aircraft that are the old typical mainline carriers and the full service carriers doing config changes. And it will be interesting because there is, I think, a possibility of some of the European airlines following Qatar and others of getting into this space, because they're not going to want to let their business and first class passengers just disappear into the ether. They're going to start looking to see how they can support them, particularly on these kind of primary routes.
Yeah, I think historically they've never been particularly successful, have they, airlines operating in business aviation?
No, I mean, some of them have got obviously, partnerships with NetJets and stuff like that. There's no great, there's no great surprise. But I think that the whole tilt of the industry because of the pandemic that's now obviously endemic, and I think we're going to have to live with for the next, kind of 5 years and life thereafter. But it's how the airlines kind of reconfigure themselves to take advantage of this new kind of paradigm that we're seeing and we're benefiting from, but we need to manage correctly. And I think, we need to kind of, gel together a bit to make sure we all sing off the same hymn sheet.
And finally, you've been working on this for years. Are you enjoying your first few weeks at Instajet?
Yes, I'd like to be flying more, but at the moment I'm just driving a desk rather than flying airplanes. But yeah, no, it's every day's a school day. Every day's a school day.
Brilliant, Nick. We look forward to seeing what you're announcing next. You've already had 2 major announcements in 2 months, so look forward to next month.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Alan. Thanks for letting me speak. Thanks so much.
Not at all. Thanks for joining us. And thanks so much to everyone this week. Robert Baltus from EEBA, Sarah McGee from FlightClear Global, and Nick Davis from Instajet. We're back next month with a review of the year and a look forward to 2022. Until then, stay safe and have a great Thanksgiving to our American friends. Can never remember what Thanksgiving was about, but I hope you have a wonderful one and enjoy lots of turkey. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.